This episode of Bringing the Backups is brought to you by Are You Sure? The Films of Pauly Shore, a brand new podcast hosted by a friend of our show, Joe Schappa, who's written for True TV, MTV, and IFC. The new podcast features a different guest each week talking with Joe about one of Pauly's movies. And there are only 6 episodes. I don't know if there's 6 Pauly Shore movies, but there's 6 episodes. And if you haven't seen any of Pauly Shore's movies, do not worry. You will still understand what's going on because comedy is not that complicated, right? Like, you'll get it. Like, you're not dumb. So anyway, you can find this podcast today on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and Amazon Music. Are You Sure? The Films of Pauly Shore with the hilarious Joe Schappa. Check that out. Oh, what is up? Welcome to Bringing the Backups. I'm your host, Erick Hellwig. On the show today, we actually have a quarterback with us, Gibran Hamdan. We are so excited. Gibran, his NFL statistics, 1 for 2 for 7 yards. Couldn't be more perfect for this podcast, and we get in depth on so many things on the interview. I'm so excited for it. It's obviously a big thing for the show to have a big guest like this on, an actual NFL veteran, our first one to do the show. I want to get through a little bit of business before we actually get it rolling here. Number one, my friend Meredith is going to hop into this show as well. My friend Meredith, you can follow her at big_mayor on Twitter. She's also, you're going to hear her on the show When Nature Calls with Helen Mirren, currently running on ABC, Thursdays at 8 p.m. Very funny comedian. I also want to very quickly thank everybody that's been reviewing the show. We're at 195 on Apple Podcasts reviews right now. Let's get to 200. 200 is going to be, big things will happen for us at 200. I'm seeing a big deal with Nike. I don't know why the fuck Nike would sponsor an audio podcast, but maybe they will. Who knows? But yeah, keep supporting that show. If you have any feedback on the show as well, you can always reach out to me, Erick Hellwig Comedy at Gmail. Let me know what you're thinking. If there's guests you want to hear on the show, if you're best friends with Clint Stoner or Stoney Case or any of these goofy named quarterbacks that I would love to have on the show, connect us. Erick Hellwig Comedy at gmail.com. We're going to get into the show right now. It's a huge episode. We're so excited to have Gibran in. So it's going to be a quick intro to the show. Usually I go 40 minutes talking about my life, but fuck my life. We're getting right to the backup this time. So let's start this show. Hang out. You're going to be glad you stayed for this one. This is Bringing the Backups with Erick Hellwig. All right. Welcome to the show, everybody. Oh, shit. I left the door open. Hang on. This will be the worst intro to a podcast ever. Hang out here while I go close my door. Hang on. I'm going to leave all of that in. I'm leaving all of that crap in. Can you imagine, you set up for a podcast, you get your little list of things you want to talk about. Oh, I got to make sure I cover this and this and that. And then you forget to close the fucking door to the room you're in. So you literally start the show 3 seconds in and have to... here's the thing. I'm not going to re-record, all right? I'm trying to get to a place here where you guys just get the raw feed. You get the raw cut. All right, so that stays. You're going to hear me start the show. And literally 2 seconds in, go, oops, so fine, whatever. That's what it is, all right? I'm not going to judge myself. I am going to give you guys a little preview, though. I am so happy to have Gibran Hamdan on the podcast today. My first NFL quarterback, baby. Woo! I did it. All me. No, if anybody follows the Instagram page for Bringing the Backups, which you should, it's just at Bringing the Backups on Instagram. You can see it yourself. I posted a photo of Gibran. This was maybe a month ago, And he started commenting on it, and it all happened right in public. I offered him the show. He didn't respond for a little bit. Clearly, and you'll hear in the interview, he listened to a few episodes as he starts to insult me off things I've said on the show relatively early on in the interview. He did his research and decided to come on the show, and it's a fucking great conversation, right? We go for almost a little over an hour, I believe. And he was just a great guest, so I'm excited. Thank you guys for, listening to the show, I guess, or what. I don't know how much I should be thanking you. I mean, I'm the one doing the work. You're welcome. How about we go with that? But anyway, Gibran also, usually I tell people, like, follow the person. But he made it very clear he does not want your follows on social media. But if you do like the show today, do me a favor. It's Gibran at Gibran.com. So it's Gibran at Gibran.com. Write to Gibran, email him, and just tell him what you thought, because he very much appreciates people's feedback. That's what he said he's valuing. That's what he wants to. I think he honestly did the podcast to help me out because he's a cool guy. Gibran at Gibran.com. And check out his website, too, because he's got some really cool shit on there, man. He does uniform redesigns. It's funny. He was, like, telling me the story of just going and, like, hanging out, playing, like, I guess, Madden, but not even playing the game, just redesigning the logos. I used to do that when I was a kid. Like, that's easily, like, some of the most fun part of franchise modes. If you're playing, like, I think he said he did it on college, but I used to do it on Madden. But yeah, creating your own team, making the uniforms, that's like the best part of so much of those games. I thought it was cool, man. And you can see some of the stuff he's designed on his website just for fun. He did Gucci. There's like a Gucci football uniform. There's an Alaska Airlines football uniform we chat about. He just put out a Bengals design today, or it was today, maybe yesterday. It looks better than the Bengals uniforms. Let's go ahead and who's in charge in Cincinnati? I mean, here's the guy. Hire Gibran. Let's do it. Let's get some better uniforms in the NFL. It's simple, modern, but simple. That's what you need. You got to get a throwback to the old times, the simpler times. That's how I feel. I want to do some quick thanks as well. I did some, LA comedy is, it's coming back. Slow and steady wins the race would be how we've come back from our love of our mask here on the West Coast. But I'm telling you, just doing live shows. My friend Matt Cole runs a show down in Fullerton, which all I think of is like, is that song from Homegrown where they're like, somewhere down in Fullerton, there's a place we used to go to get away from it all. I think that must be the same place. I don't know. Are there other places named Fullerton in places where pop bands grew up? That has to be Fullerton. Anyway, whatever. I did a show with him in Fullerton that was really fun. My friend Valerie, a hilarious comic, put me on a show up at the Comedy Chateau in North Hollywood. That was awesome. It was like a sold-out show with an audience in a great room. They have a great setup at the Chateau. And I was just like, God damn, we're back. We're back. We're rolling. It's the Zoom shows can suck a dick. It's gone. They're done. I'm saying no. I'm holding fast to saying no to these fucking virtual shows because I'm telling you, the real life ones are happening. And my God, it has been so much fucking fun. I think I said it on the podcast a couple episodes ago, but it just makes you happy, to have this thing gone from your life for as long as it was. And then all of a sudden, here you are doing stand-up and making people laugh and meeting people after the show. And it's just back to your life, and for me, that's the thing I like doing the most in my life. So it's been fucking great, and I'm so thankful for the opportunities I've had to just get up on stage recently. It's like I feel reborn in a way. I even, as you guys know, I'm from New York, and I used to perform at Broadway Comedy Club there in the city. Apparently, a guy reached out to me I guess I won't say his name yet because I don't know if he's advertising himself, but a guy reached out to me to audition for Broadway Comedy Club, and I wanted to be like, oh, you can't call it that because there's already a Broadway Comedy Club in New York. I'm an idiot. Broadway Comedy Club is coming to LA. They're opening up a location in Santa Monica. And he was asking me to audition for the one here, which I got passed at. So I'm going to be getting spots at Broadway Comedy Club on both coasts, which is great. Every time I go home, I can do one in New York. And while I'm out here, I've got one in Santa Monica. But it's just exciting. It's just exciting to feel like shows are a fucking thing again. I'm just so happy. I'm just so happy, guys. That's always good comedy, right? When a comic walks on stage and they're like, I love my wife, and we're the best. You're just like, fuck you. It's so hard. Like, so many comics worry about, like, can I just live a good life and still be funny? Can I do things? It's such a yes. The answer is yes. Go become like. I remember when I was really an idiot starting in stand-up. I was like 20. This is like when I was really starting. I was 22, 23 the first time I was starting it. And the idea of like therapy, I was like, oh, that's going to hurt it. Like if I fix the things that are, those are the things that make me funny. I don't want to fix those things. And it's such a dumb way to think. Because the truth is like when you go to therapy, you don't fix anything. You're just more aware of it as it happens. And if anything, it gives you a chance to like harness your fucking usually trauma or pain or whatever. And you get to harness it on stage. You get to use your anger for good. You know, like me punching a hole in my wall 2 months ago, bad. Me yelling at an audience and making them laugh because I think they're, dumb for trying to pursue acting at the age of 60. Good. It's good to use the angst has to come out some way. You know, the teapot will boil. Right? When it makes that little noise. I can't do it. Like when it's ready to go. Boop. All right, look, I'm not exactly the fucking dude from the Police Academy movies with these sound effects, all right? I can't be a fucking Swiss Army knife of talent, all right? I got a good voice. I can do stand-up. I can't do the fucking sound effects. I'm not going to get on myself for that. Another quick shout-out to Colby Dant, who's a new friend of mine. I found a podcast. I found a podcast for Army football, which, I mean, how fucking when do you find those? They don't exist. There's like As for Football, which I'm a fan of those guys. I'll give them a shout out. And then that's it. And then this guy popped up. It was like the Army Black Knights 2021 season preview. I was just Googling Army football to try to fall asleep at night and, not think of my father yelling at me when I was a child. And I was like, oh my God, it's like a 40-minute podcast breaking down the team. And it's great. It's just a broed out sports show. And I was like, I wrote the guy, I was like, hey man, if you ever want to talk about any MAC teams, I fucking love shitty non-Power 5 conference football. I'll talk about any of those teams with you. And so he did, man. I went on his show. We talked about the Eastern Michigan Eagles with their gray field up at the factory in Ypsilanti, Michigan. Ypsilanti? Who gives a fuck? But the point is, it was amazing. We had such a good time. I ended up doing a show with him and Sean Green. I think the umbrella for that show is the Sports Gambling Network. No, maybe the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. I think that's what it is. But yeah, those guys have like a little crew that they run with, and they just talk. I just love, because like it's a betting show, which I don't know shit about betting. But I guess Colby's running this show where he's just previewing all the teams, and where else do you get 50 minutes on the Akron Zips? Where? It doesn't exist. It's very much in the spirit of what this podcast is, which is like, who wants to hear about Cleo Lemon for 2 hours? There's like 13 of you. I think I've found all of you. I don't think there's anywhere to grow my audience. It's niche. That's the whole point. So the college football experience, which you can hear me on, I highly recommend it. It's a fucking great podcast. if you are a college football fan, and they preview the big teams too, but man, I mean, do you want to hear about Bowling Green? Or do you? Because he goes into it, man. You get your fix of the Falcons. It was fucking sweet, man. So hopefully you guys can go check them out and support them, because I think it's going to be. I don't feel like I have to even sell you on it. It's like, if you like sports, if you like college football, it fucking rules. All right, look, let's do a quick pre-planned bit. I'll be back 5 minutes later. We're going to get into the interview with Gibran, because, I mean, I think this has been my worst podcast so far to start. So we should get into the really good interview that I did. But yeah, before any of that, you guys know what's up. If you want something done right, you need to do it yourself. Unless it's telling your audience how to support your podcast, because that shit gets old real quick. I think you should outsource it. And that's what I've done. Welcome to My Friends and Family Plug My Show. These are real people with real reasons why you should support me. I hope you listen, I hope you hear, and I do hope you support.
I'm Erick's friend Meredith, although sometimes he refers to me as his friend's wife, and I am actually a fan of this podcast. I regularly use things I've learned here to try to have surface-level conversations with my dad about the AFC North. Go Browns! I say all of this because if he doesn't receive enough praise, Erick is on the brink of becoming a full-on supervillain. Keep him on the side of good. Join his newsletter, follow his social media at Erick Hellwig on all platforms, or write a 5-star review on Apple Podcast. Those stars could make the difference in Erick not going full-on Rita Repulsa. And don't forget to check out erickhellwig.com, because knowing Erick's fragile ego, he is checking analytics on that page multiple times a day. That's E-R-I-C-K, hell, like the place Erick might end up if you don't save his soul now. Wig, like what I will wear when Erick makes me rip my hair out.com. Erick really needs this. Things are so bad that he hasn't been able to update the recording that intros this pre-planned bit since the show began.
Yeah, I should probably get on updating that shit, right? It's a little lengthy in the intro. My friend Meredith, again, follow her on Twitter at @big_Mare. And those, you hear those pipes? Those pipes she's got, huh? You can hear those on, what the fuck is her show called? When Nature Calls. Why am I saying it like I hate it? When Nature Calls, with Helen Mirren. Who is Helen Mirren? Is she a dame? I know there's Dame Judi Dench. I feel like that's just a hack joke. People go like, oh, who's a random person? Dame Judi Dench. Where it's like, we fucking get it. It's been in 35 TV shows at this point. You're not being original. But I think Helen Mirren might be a dame too, right? Does that mean like you're knighted by the queen or something? Or they give you like an olive branch, some symbolic shit that doesn't mean anything? We're all just meat with holes. Anyway, follow Meredith on Twitter. Check out that show. It's animals talking to each other. I think Liz was on here because Liz is on the show too. Liz was on here promoting it last episode. So, that's 2 weeks in a row. You're getting the fucking little bit of ad action for When Nature Calls. I'm sure a show that gets millions of views on ABC really needs the bringing the backups bump. I'm sure the 5 of you that tuned in because I told you to on Thursday at 8 o'clock, that's making the difference for whether or not there's a season 2. Or whatever, go check it out. Speaking of ads, you hear the fucking ad at the beginning of the podcast? Boom! I got a fucking ad read, baby! This should be a good show. Joe's a funny guy. If anybody else wants to do ad on this thing, let's fucking go, man. Erick Hellwig Comedy at Gmail. It's $400 a second, and I want you to pay me in Bitcoin. No, I don't know. I'll quote you something reasonable. Whatever. If you think my audience would like your shit, and you're not like a fucking pedophile or something, yeah, shoot me an email. I'll do a quick Google on you. Make sure you're not a scumbag. And then, I'll throw you on the pot if you want. I do have some good news before we start talking Gibran. I lost 12 pounds. Huh? Since they told me I was pre-diabetic, and they're like, hey, listen, fat ass, let's lose some. Let's hop on the treadmill. brother. That's what they told me. Doctors were very mean about it, and I responded to it. I think I've said before, like I can't have flowery language around food. If someone's like, you need to, I know I'm supposed to like intuitively eat. Supposed to like, feel the healthy thing to do, but I need someone to be like, put the cupcake down, cupcake. It's going straight to your ass. Like that helps me. You're gonna die. Your family will say goodbye to you before it's your time. Like that is the way I need it to hear it. So yeah, I dropped, it was like 12 pounds in 3 months, just eating healthy and fucking going to the gym, swimming. I've gotten really into swimming. I'm not good at it, but it's fun. And apparently it's good for like old fucks. I mean, every time I go to the pool, it's me and a woman who's 195 years old, fucking taking up the whole lane. And I'll usually, like, if I swim around her twice, she's been there the last 3 times. I think she lives in the fucking pool. She might be, I don't know, I feel like there's a lot of movies where, like, people, like, fuck octopuses and stuff now. Like, she might be, like, one of those, like, it's an M. Night Shyamalan movie where, like, if she leaves the water, her true form is revealed. Like, she might just live at the fucking LA Fitness across from where I live. But she's been there 3 times, and if I swim around her, usually once or twice, she'll like learn to just take up half the fucking lane, but she just walks down. She's walking. She's not swimming. She's walking laps in the pool, and she walks right down the center. It's like, this is a swimming lane, lady. Pick a side. I scraped my hand doing freestyle trying to get around her on the corner. Yeah, it's like, I don't know. And that's the thing where I'm like, at that point I should have, whatever. What do you say? Hindsight is 20/20. What I should have done is, as soon as I hit my hand on the side, I should have stopped swimming, looked at her, and been like, "Would you mind getting over so I don't hit my hand on the side?" That's what I should have done. But I didn't. And, in a weird way, I feel like I avoided the conflict. I just kept swimming and kind of felt like my hand hurting. And when I look back at it, it was like blood running down my hand because this lady's taking up too much of the lane. What would you do? She's old. It's like something about, if it was like a young dude or a young chick, my age, I don't think I'd have a problem. But when it's like some old lady, I'm like, I'm going to like make their last day on earth be about me hurting my hand for a second? Like what? Just swim around them, Respect your elders. Isn't that like a thing we don't do that here, especially in LA? Geez, like respect your elders. It's like once you turn 40, you have to get a fucking surgery to make your face look like a fucking cat. Nobody respects old shit in LA. But like I feel like I would try to respect old people. I move around them on the fucking, I don't know, maybe I should just say something. Maybe I will say something. I don't know. She seems to get the message. When I will say, like, when I swim past her, if I'm kicking, I obviously don't kick her, but like as I'm getting past, I power with my feet and a little water comes up. I'm not saying I'm kicking her in the face with water. I'm not. But I'm not going out of my way to make it easy for her to block me swimming. All right? I sound like a piece of shit. I don't know what to say. She's taken up the whole lane. I'm paying for a membership. I should get to swim. Move it. All right. Do you guys know who Gibran Hamdan is? I feel like I've talked about him multiple times on the show now. Went to my high school. Was a senior when I was a freshman. This is at Bishop O'Connell in Arlington, Virginia. Catholic school. And played at Indiana for his senior season. Got drafted in 2003 to the Washington football team. Was the MVP of NFL Europe in 2006. Started 7 out of 10 games, still won MVP. That's how dominating he was it really was his only chance to start regularly in his career. His last season, he was with Toronto in the CFL in 2010. And we go through his career, the places he played. He's the first player in the NFL to be of Pakistani descent and also Palestinian. He's half Pakistani, half Palestinian. There's never been another player in the NFL with either of those things. So he's broken down some fucking walls. And we talk about it in the podcast. I would say that this is probably the most, like, I don't want to say political, but like just like charged podcast I've done. Because usually I'm just talking to like my dipshit comic friends who have nothing to offer the world. No offense. Thanks for doing the show, whoever you are that's listening. But I mean, it was a fucking intense chat and like sad at moments, but also Gibran's got a great sense of humor, so we end up laughing a bunch too. I mean, we talked about shit I did not think we would ever talk about. That's the best way to say it, is like, I was expecting it to be, I don't want to be an asshole. I was expecting him to be a football player. You know, like I covered football players. I used to be a journalist. You know, I used to cover the sports teams. Football players, generally speaking, they know a lot of football and not a lot of anything else. That's usually how it goes. They're not solving math problems on blackboards while being janitors, all right? They're not Matt Damon in fucking Good Will Hunting, okay? It's a type, and they have a window of about 13 seconds to make their money, so they focus on football, and they should. But Gibran is a fucking smart dude. It was illuminating for me in many ways, so I was really happy to have him on. And look, like I said a little bit before, if you do like this episode, do not follow Gibran on social media. Shoot him an email. That's what he wants. Gibran@Gibran.com. Let him know what you think. But without further ado, let's get to our first ever interview with an NFL quarterback on Bringing the Backups, making history today. Enjoy my chat with Gibran.
Big dog status, I'm a big dog vet. I pull up on the block in a big Corvette. Ride around the city with a stick all black. Try with a spoken, we ain't with all that.
Good for you, man. It sounds really good, actually. I mean, I'm pretty impressed.
Great.
I mean, I made a movie like right when the pandemic was going or whatever, and like I totally the audio is just so shit. It's like this, you know, I did everything myself, and then the audio, I was like, oh, I got this like boom mic that I rented to attach to the thing. It'll be fine, you know. Like I don't need an audio guy. And then you like get into post, and you're like, oh shit. This audio is hot garbage.
Is it usable?
You know?
Like, can you release the film?
Well, I did. I put it, you know, in my true fashion, I just put shit out, and I know that nothing's going to run. People that, you know, it's on YouTube, it's on my website. But yeah, I mean, it's cool. The things I'm pretty good at turned out pretty cool. It was a little too wordy. The movie guys that I know were like, yo, basically my strategy was, since I'd never written a script or anything, it's like, yo, we're just going to let people talk. Like, who gives a fuck? Just like in real life, you know? So basically, what I did well was I got everybody into their character and like got the like vibes right, but everybody's just talking incessantly. And there was maybe one, other than the visuals are cool, the pace is good. But, you know, the storyline is kind of... Anyway.
Well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to sick all my fans on your YouTube video to provide comments on what you can improve for next time. Does that sound like a... Good idea.
Man, you can. It's not like I'm going to read them, but yeah, you can.
Dude, this is a great point to start off. I mean, first off, thank you for doing my podcast. I can't believe I have an actual quarterback on the show. I don't know if you've listened to episodes. I think you have because
I have. I've been studying. I heard when you called me stiff as a basketball player at the center at O'Connell, which probably was the most accurate description of my basketball game ever. But in my defense, I only played like basketball 2 years in my life at that point, and I was going up against Keith Bogans, Ruben Boomshay, who just got off the boat from Africa and was like living with John Thompson, and I'm trying to cover this 6'11" dude, and I'm like, yo, I just like picked up a basketball 2 years ago, bro.
You know what's crazy, man, is like I was a freshman, and we should introduce you to the podcast. This is Gibran Hamdan, and that's with Soft G.
Soft G.
Soft G. I guess you did hear that part of me butchering your name on one of the podcasts as well. I've had so many quarterbacks that have been like close to coming on the show. I can't believe you actually agreed to it. I think our connection, the fact that we went to the same high school and were there at the same time, helped. And I have to say, like, I remember you because you were the star athlete in the school. Like, it was your senior year, my freshman year. And to me, you look exactly the same now as you did when you were 18 years old. Like, I feel like you were taller in high school. Like in my mind, I'm like, you were 7'5". You could.
I was huge,
dude. You must have hit your growth spurt early. Is that fair to say?
No, that's actually not true. Basically, the reason I ended up at O'Connell was that my high school football coach at my first high school at Winston Churchill told me I would never amount to anything, and I was like 6'1". Had a rocket for an arm, but like I had never played football in my life. It was my sophomore year. And he was also the baseball coach, and I was a pretty good baseball coach. So I think it was his way of telling me to quit football so I could just focus on baseball the whole time. And I was 6'1", hadn't really like gotten big. And he was like, yo, you'll never amount to anything in football. You should quit. And I was like, bro, I like football. Like, I'm getting out of this place. And that's when I transferred to O'Connell. And I think when I got there, I was like 6'2". That junior year, I went from like 6'2" to 6'4". So it was a late growth spurt, frankly.
Yeah, well, like I said, in my mind, you were just like a different species. You were just like this huge dude.
Right.
I was like, I just remember staring up at you in the hallway being like, I'm going to get my ass kicked in high school. This is crazy. Because I'm young I had an October birthday. So like I had I was like shorter than most of the girls in almost every year going up. So I don't think similar to you, probably didn't start growing until junior, senior years when
you're not going to like to hear this, but I was young too. I graduated. I was a 17 when I graduated.
Dude, you're so going you're so going against the grain of what every quarterback I feel like I've talked about on this show, their parents held them back so they
held them back. Yep. Now I grew up in Kuwait, and I went to British school, which was my first school, Sunshine School of Kuwait, and the British start their kids a year early. So I turned 16 like late junior year, and then was 17 when I was getting recruited and all that stuff, which was comical because looking back on it, like if I had those 2 extra years of development, compared to the people I was going with, it would have been like kind of a joke. I mean, I guess the benefit is I got out earlier, and I'm going to have an extra year of my life to live, whatever you want to say. But yeah, I was younger than everybody I played against the whole time, so it's comical.
Dude, and I would imagine that it's even more of a disadvantage because so many people are holding their kids back for the specific purpose of athletic advantage. Look, I have so many. I would rather have you on the podcast than Tom Brady. That's the honest to God truth. In
all honesty, Tom is better than me at most things, but I'm probably a better podcast guest than Tom Brady. I will take that.
Yeah, no, he would just be trying to like think of ways to use it as motivation to keep playing football at the age of 45.
Right. But you would get a ton more followers if Tom Brady was on the podcast instead of me. So it all depends on what your metric for success is here. If you want a very good banter, very entertaining for the 100 guests that listen to this right now, then it's going to be awesome. But if you wanted to like catapult yourself to getting sponsored by, what was it, the DiGiorno's Pizza?
Oh my
Well,
God!
then you probably want Tom Brady on.
I hope
So,
DiGiorno's never gets a whiff of this podcast. I'm getting sued. I've been going hard at them after they ripped up my intestines. Where to start? Was Colonel Gutter at O'Connell when you were there?
Colonel Gutter was. Yes, he was.
Yeah, I don't know. I was just trying to think of like random things I can remember from high school.
Jim Hayes.
Oh yeah, Coach Hayes.
Yeah, Snyder.
Coach Hayes taught me about sperm.
Yeah,
Herman the Sperman. I remember that very well. So one thing I noticed about your career, it looked like in 2006 when you were with the Amsterdam Admirals.
Yep.
Am I correct in saying that was your only extended for multiple games back to back being the guy?
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. Like,
that's true, and I won the MVP.
Yes,
so what's that say? Yeah.
Well, look. If you've listened to the podcast, this is what happens. I only talk about the quarterback usually for about 10 or 15 minutes. In the first 5 minutes, I'm like, this guy never got a shot. Then about 5 minutes later, I go, okay, this guy kind of sucks. And then at the very end, I go, I wonder if this guy will do my podcast. That's what I do on the show. Saying you never got a chance, I think is fucking fair considering the one time you had extended playing time, you won the fucking MVP and had a perfect quarterback rating through 3 games.
Yeah. The truth is it's a 10-game season, and I got injured in Game 7. I played the entire Game 7 on a broken ankle, threw for 300 and 2 touchdowns. That you would be right to say it. There's a lot to unpack there. It kind of depends on how far you want to go. You're the interviewer. I mean, there's a lot of shit here. But, the good thing is that I'm in a place where, like, unlike a lot of my former teammates, and, I don't have some of the residual stuff that they do, largely because of, like, I probably shouldn't even gotten a chance in the first place. So it's kind of a weird juxtaposition. I was really lucky to even get to the place I was. So now looking back and saying like, oh, well, the one time I got a chance to play, I was NFL Europe MVP. And some of the reasons why I didn't get to play were vocalized to me that were less than kind. But with all that being said, I won. So I don't want to get into a place, obviously, in my life where I'm looking back and saying like, oh, what if and all that stuff. But yes, that is true. I played 7 games and won the MVP. And it's funny because going back, maybe this will highlight a little bit of it to you, is that I think it was maybe 05. I was with the Seahawks. And Jim Zorn, the quarterback coach, had a psychologist come in and give all the quarterbacks a psychology test. And then he shared what we learned with us. And that psychologist had been to like a bunch of other teams too. And apparently I scored on that test differently than any quarterback that had reached the professional level that he had ever tested. Really? Like everyone was a type A, go-getter, dominate the world type person. And then like the card came back on me, not to Zorn's surprise. Zorn was like, we were friends, but he was like, you kind of suck. Like, you're not very good. But it wasn't like because of physical, it was just because like he didn't like understand my mentality, and so this psychology thing. So he told me this story, and he was basically like, listen, the psychologist came back and said, this is what you scored. And Zorn, speaking from Zorn's perspective, he's like, I immediately thought, okay, like exactly what I thought about Gibran is true. But actually what the psychologist referenced was that like my personality is such that if I'm the 3rd string quarterback, I'm going to be the best 3rd string quarterback that you could have. I.e., I was stealing signals way before the Patriots got in trouble. This was these teams were sending in defensive signals with hand signals. And I played baseball, bro. It was like they had the indicator was like, touch of the hat. I was like, oh, fuck, this is going to be easy. So I was, the 3rd string quarterback. I was telling Holmgren, hey, it's cover 3. He'd be calling a cover 3 play, and Hasselbeck would hit it. And I would literally make the traveling roster because I was stealing signals, because that's what a good 3rd string quarterback should be doing. Like, what else are you going to do, right? But the psychologist said, well, then when he gets an opportunity to be the starter, what he does is he's going to, do the best at being the starter. That's like kind of like my makeup. And that's just like kind of unheard of in that profession at that position. It doesn't matter if you're the third string guy, it's like everybody wants to be the guy.
Yeah.
So, if they're the third guy, they're not thinking about stealing signals to help the team. They're really kind of like, how do I become the two? How do I become the one? Largely might be one of the reasons you're having a challenge getting people on is like, your show is called Bringing in the Backups. And like, I might be the only quarterback in history that's like, when you say backup, I'm like, yeah, I was a backup, like for real, yeah. But everybody else, like, you're talking about, who have you talked about? Charlie Fry started games. If they've started a game, bro, they're not looking at themselves as backup. And it's like this was, there are 100 quarterback jobs in the world every year. It's like, this is like elite level. So, if you changed your name to bring in the starters who unfortunately were sometimes subjected to being backups, you probably get a shit ton of guys on here. I'd be like, yeah, let me talk about my shit right now.
That was the original title for the podcast, and it didn't fit on the Apple logo. Look, dude, I love what you're saying because it was literally a question I was going to ask. I know how into art you are. Like, I've been just following like what you do on your website, and like I just looking at your Insta stories for the last couple of years. Like, and even when I'm looking up YouTube videos of you getting interviewed after practice, you're mentioning your art, and I'm like, this is unlike anybody I've heard talk in a presser as a quarterback. So I do think that there's something to how you carry yourself, and that's why you're the first. I don't think all the athletes I've known, when I was at O'Connell, I was the sports editor for the paper for 2 years, and I covered the football team in college where I went. You're right. All the football players I knew were like, if they were third string, they're like, what happens if this dude breaks his kneecap? How can I move up on this roster spot? It's very alpha male. I feel the fact that you have a creative side, like, probably gives you more willingness to look at your career honestly. I feel like you probably have a better sense of humor and more self-awareness than a lot of guys would.
Yeah, I think that's obviously true. I think like reasons for me coming on the podcast is like, you're doing a creative thing. You're putting yourself out there. You're trying something new. I appreciate that. I've basically been doing that the last 12, 15 years. And so I understand how hard it can be. So, me having a conversation with you is like water off it's easy to me. And if it at all propels you forward in whatever way, then awesome. I think the interesting thing is that, to me, the part about the NFL that I'll say that whenever I'm asked is the part that's fascinating is like, at such a young age, the part that you referenced, which is like we all have a vision of what this top level is, right? And then we're kind of like trying to meet it. We're going through the day to day. Is like luckily, I got to see that level at such a young age, and I was like bottom of the depth chart, minimum salaried, the whole time.
Yeah.
And I was sitting next to dudes that like just got a check in their locker. Bruce Smith has a $250,000 check in his locker that he's not cashing. And I'm like, yo, bro, just go cash it, bro. Get the investment going. And he's just got like stacks of checks in his locker. And I'm just like, yo, this dude, like at the time I was able to recognize that I have reached, at least in America, this like sacred ground of like NFL quarterback. And I'm here, and these dudes are still fighting with their wives. They're still getting in car accidents. They're still going to the dry cleaners and shit. Like nothing, like there's no magic shit. It's like basic stuff. It's like, like on the phone with their wife complaining about something they got. I'm like, yeah, bro, like you're no different than like anybody else. Like you got a lot more money, and everybody thinks you're cool. And so that view, I basically have gotten that view. So it's really, that's the gift. The gift is that like the whole veil of all the bullshit that is like inundated, males and females, but predominantly males in this country. All the bullshit is exactly that. It's just fucking bullshit, really. Because if you get if I gave if I gave you the opportunity to be like, yo, Nick Offerman, real Nick Offerman, not secondhand Nick Offerman, and you saw his bank account and you got all your scripts green lighted, you got all your shit. Well, then you saw it and you'd be like, okay, like basically my bank account is bigger, which is cool. Don't get me wrong. I'm not demeaning some of that stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm saying like intrinsically deeper, there's this thing there that once you get past it, once you're like, it's all bullshit, really. What's important is in fact not this vision of what you think is going to be the type A, but what's important is the B shit. Like what you're doing right now. That's just the reality.
Well, it's just,
and that's the gift.
It just feels like an ability to be happy with what you have, not basing your happiness on I'll be happy once I get to that place. I mean, I just feel like that's the key to life, man, is being willing to actually enjoy what's right in front of you. And the journey of it is like what you have to enjoy. You have to enjoy the fact. I mean, I can see like in your art how much you embrace all the places you've lived, and like how you got to like this provided you an opportunity to travel. And like I think there's, I don't know, like we mentioned Tom Brady, but like I watched the documentary of him. This is like after his 4th Super Bowl, and he's still like weeping at the fact that he got drafted in the 7th round, and like remembers the names of the quarterbacks that went before. Like the level of like anger, like fueling it. I'm like, there's no question he's had this great run, and like part of that's luck, but also part of that's like amazingly hard work and determination. But yeah, like I wonder about like someone like that's ability to be happy in the moment.
Yeah, I think a lot of the things that quarterbacks in particular struggle with, and one of the reasons why I've basically like just done everything but football for the last, I haven't watched a game in like 7 years, so forgive me, but like, is that, if you don't force yourself to do other things, especially as a former quarterback, it's basically just going to hang over you. Like, it's just like, That's just what's going to happen. And so I'm like, I started innocuously doing it, and then I recognized kind of what I was doing. And then I kind of became this version that I find myself of being right now, which is like totally devoid of football in my life, largely because I recognize that like, it was 10 years. I did what I did. I probably got a lot further than I deserved to get. There's 50 dudes at home that were like gazillion times better players than me and never got drafted, never got in the league. And that's just a fact. It's a fact. And so running away from it was my best answer. Like, just run as far away from it as possible. And it's super weird because you find out along the way, like, people be like, even now when I create or like a business hires me for something or do something, and they find out I played football, like, oh, what? Because I'm so far away. My new thing is like, I want to be like, I literally have been thinking about becoming, I don't know if you saw Ted Lasso,
I did.
That show. Like, I've been, I've gotten a couple job offers to get into coaching. Right. And it's like, I've always just said no. But like, I literally want to be like a European football coach one day. Like, the real life Ted Lasso. And then I kind of got pissed that the show came out because now I got like a higher climb because everybody's be like, oh, this motherfucker thinks it's Ted Lasso and shit. But like, no, like I want that new challenge, right? Like, what's next?
And you mean
because it'd be so easy.
You mean like
like football before, like American soccer. But like, I want to go overseas and like, some 3rd division in Monaco and just like fucking coach a fucking football team. Hey, let's run a 4-3-3. I want my wingers here. And be like, yo, what are you? I'm like, I've watched the game, guys. I know what to do now.
Yeah. Dude, even the idea of like diversifying your life a little bit, regardless of like, I don't know. I just think about like as a stand-up, I know so many people that were so into getting good at stand-up. That's all they did. Mic after mic after mic. This is back when I was in New York, where you could do like 6 or 7 mics in a night and a couple shows. And if you time it out right on the subway, you could just be up every night, 7 days a week. But like, if you don't leave space for your life to actually have experiences outside of the thing, after a couple of years, all your jokes are about other comics or like the subway ride to shows. Like, you don't have a life to comment on. Yeah, that idea of like not getting too into like I feel it in myself too. I have to force myself to take breaks from creative stuff to go like take my wife out to dinner, go on a weekend vacation, like get on a train and go down to San Diego and see a baseball, like force myself to pull out of like because I could literally just work on stand up, the podcast, and writing. I could do that every minute, every day, and still feel like I'm not doing enough. The discipline to like actually have a life when you're pursuing something hard is like a balance that I think a lot of people don't strike well. And they use examples of guys who have like crushed it as like, I'll just be like that guy. But most people that do it end up like you were saying, like it hangs over you too much if you don't force yourself to actually enjoy your life while you're alive.
There you go. Put it on a coffee mug and you're good.
Enjoy your life while you've got it, man. Yeah. Actually, one of my I watched the video of you, and it was like 2 days before you retired. I guess you had gone to Toronto, and you're getting interviewed in the rain, and you're like, they're like, wow, how do you feel about being in the Argos? And you're like, oh man, the field is so. It's like there's something about the way the game and like it's different up here. It's almost like art. And I was listening to you talk, being like, this dude's about to retire. Like, there's no way this guy is gonna make it. And then like I Googled it, and you retired like 2 days later. So
I retired 5 minutes before that interview, motherfucker. Like,
did you really?
Legit in my mind, I retired 5 minutes before that interview. So that's really good investigative work. No, I mean, basically I played with 11 players on a 100-yard field for how many ever 6 years, 7 years, 8 years. And so the rhythm and the timing and everything, like I knew how to throw every ball, et cetera, et cetera. And so then Toronto brings up Cleo Lemon, me, Ken Dorsey, like NFL dudes that are like, okay, well, I'm going to go up to Canada. And I knew them well. I knew Cleo well. I'd spent time with them, stuff. So like, we were there, and it was comical because the coach, I'll never forget it. It was like the off season, and the coach made us fly to the Everglades in Florida and then drove us like 3 hours to some random ass farm, and we were going to practice there. And I was like, I didn't sign with Toronto, this cosmopolitan fucking city. Like I was going up there like, shit, I'll have fun in fucking Toronto at the least. Right? To go to the Everglades and 3 hour drive and all this bullshit. And so that's when I kind of was like, yeah, this is some straight type A coach wants to like think that if you sequester us in some bullshit farm, we're going to play really well. When in reality, I'm a grown ass man, like just put us on a field, teach us the game. So that's kind of where it started. But then you get to training camp and there's like an extra player on the other side. And there's like a motion with the wide receiver, and the field is different, and you only get 3 downs. And I was like 2 practices in, I was like, yo, I don't know which one of us is going to start, but whoever does is going to get like 2 or 3 concussions this season. Yeah. Without a doubt, because you're going to hold on to the ball too long. You don't intrinsically know what to do before the ball is snapped, which is basically when you're playing at a high level. It's like, yo, I know what I'm going to do. Like, all I have to do is work my eyes one way, and then I'm going to go there with the rock, and it's going to be fine. I just got to execute it. But I was like, yo, I don't have that feeling. And I had just gotten married, and I was like, nobody's clamoring for me in the NFL. And so, right before that interview, or right after that interview, I went to them. I'm like, yo, guys, I'm done. And they were like, what are you talking about? Like, you are picking it up. Like, you're in the competition. I was like, yeah, nah, I'm good. And I just packed my car up and drove home. And Cleo got 2 concussions that season.
I was going to say, man, because I did.
He had a hard year.
I did. One of the shots, when I started the podcast, Cleo was, I think, my 3rd or 4th quarterback. And I was editing these YouTube videos with like the highlights of the quarterback. It took way too long. I only did it 3 episodes and stopped.
Yeah.
But most of his highlights are from that 2010 Argonauts season. And it's him getting wrecked. He's getting, there's one time where he's like scrambling and fighting for yards, and someone just comes like full speed into his helmet, knocks it off. You see him like pass out. Yeah, dude. Yeah, I mean,
I have that. Sometimes like I have this ability to like, I shouldn't say this, but that's happened a couple times to me, but like that's the one I'm super unfortunate about, because I was yelling at both those guys, the Gyodus. I'm telling you right now, this is not going to be a safe season for us.
Yeah.
Like, they're going to need all three of us. And,
Just because
I'm sad that happened.
Just
Well,
because
the position is like, when you have the ball, when you have the rock, you just have to be so so precise, and just your mental and your body, and it's like an internal timer. And like, if anything messes with that, and frankly, adding an extra player on the defense, having a wide receiver in motion, and having different spatial recognition on the field size is way more than enough. Frankly, one extra guy on defense that you have to account for was enough.
Yeah.
It was going to take 3 or 4 years to just really get that, in tune. And then sure enough, like on the drive back, after a couple of weeks, Alex Van Pelt, who you also mentioned, called me to go to Tampa to be the fourth in Tampa. But like, you could see it in my voice in that interview.
Yeah.
I told Alex, I'm like, Alex, I'm done. The train has left the station. He's like, what are you talking about? Like, you might make the team. I'm like, bro, like the $500,000 sounds good right about now, but like, I don't know. It just in my, it just didn't feel right. It just was not right, which is unheard of. The rule in the NFL is you just play until they stop calling.
Yeah.
And I was just like, man, this doesn't, So
yeah,
you're right.
When you made that decision to leave, because in the article that they wrote about you, you were like, my name's not popping up. I'm fucking done. Out. Like you were clearly done. Like, are you? Because you'd met. How into art were like? How much did you know what branch you were going to be jumping onto at that point, or you just knew I'm
zero
one thing?
Here's what really happened on that drive home. If you're ready, are you ready?
I'm fucking ready, dude.
All right. So I had done NFL broadcast boot camp the season before going up to Toronto, my last season in the NFL. NFL broadcast boot camp, you send in video clips of some video work you do, and they pick 12 guys from the league, and you go get trained to become a broadcaster. And JB is there, and Howie's there. All the big names are there, and you basically go through a week trying to, teach yourself how to become a broadcaster. I was the smallest name going in, obviously. And by the end, JB, CBS, everybody was like, yo, you need to do this. Like, you need to do this. And I was like, okay, cool. It's kind of fun at the time. I mean, I still like football. I felt like I could talk. And so they made a highlight reel for me. And an agent from New York, I got hooked up with an agent from New York, and he saw the highlight reel. He's like, yo, we need to talk. I was like, cool, let's talk. And I'm back 2 weeks. And at the same time this is happening, I'm teaching myself how to sew on my wife's sewing machine. Because I was just bored and was going to this fabric shop that was like right down the street that had like leftover like high-end fabrics. And I was like, oh, cool. Like I can make shit, let me sew. So I'm like sewing half the day and working on this broadcasting shit. So I have this call with this agent, big time New York agent, a lot of broadcasters. He's like, okay, I got 2 things to say. I'm like, all right. Oh, and as I'm sewing, this teenager that lived next to my wife's mom's house was like super adept at websites and like Adobe Illustrator and all this shit I should have been learning in college or doing, but I never did. And he started showing me Illustrator, Adobe products, and he taught me HTML and CSS. I was like, oh shit. Like I can just like put a couple codes into a computer and design shit. This is amazing. So basically I was like half the time was like doing all this creative shit and really thinking broadcasting, right? I mean, why wouldn't I? And this call with this agent, he's like, your film is amazing. He's like, top 5 I've seen this year, but I have a big problem. You're Palestinian.
Are you serious?
I was like, whoa. Cause like then the conversation takes like a different turn. I was like, that's not what I experienced. He's like, bro, I'm just keeping it real with you. I've sent the video out a little bit, get some feelers. And you do know that like a predominantly big portion of this industry is Jewish, right? I was like, yeah, I know. Like all my friends you grew up in the DC area.
Yeah.
Like I just finished texting one of my best friends, a Jewish Jew. Like that's just like life. Like we don't care about that shit, right? But there is a certain group that does. And he's like, I just got to be honest with you. Like, I think you're going to get a couple color commentary jobs. You're going to work your ass off. You're going to be really good. And you have a lot of talent and you could like progress. But like your name, your skin color, and the fact that you actually are half Palestinian is like, you're never going to get the big jobs, bro. Like you are never, ever, ever going to get the big jobs. And it, to be honest, like I don't want to, it resembled some of the things I had heard during my playing career, to be honest.
Yeah.
So I was like, it was starting to get sticky a little bit in the convo. I was like, oh man, I've seen and heard this kind of shit before. I don't want to get involved with it. It's not like what my life needs to be about, but it's kind of fucked up, but whatever. And then the kicker was like, he's like, but I did find already, I got you a 6-figure payday if you're willing to go to the Middle East as a war correspondent. So this dude's like, yo, you can go be a war correspondent for $100K, man. You're like the perfect fit. The industry will gladly send you to the front lines in Israel and Palestine to get your take. And I'm looking over at the sewing machine. I'm looking at this little logo I'm making. I'm looking at this website I'm building. I'm like, yo, I know this shit is not going to make me any money over here, but at least I'll be having a lot more fun than this bullshit. And that was it. That was exactly how the next wave started. It took this conversation with this agent to like kind of get me out of this like, oh, I'm going to be a TV analyst. I've got this. I had the requisite skills and talents that would have gone into that profession and made a living.
Yeah.
And I just basically went, fuck that. I'm going to go here where I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. Never used Illustrator, never used websites, never used a sewing machine. And I'm just going to do that.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to get down that path.
What would have been crazy is if like some web designer showed up at your house like a week later and was like, look, man, you're really good at this website stuff, but because you're Palestinian, we're going to need you to go uncover the war and design a website to explain to people what's happening. We need you in the front. That's fucking, dude, that's...
Oh, man. But you know what? In all honesty, based on my response to you, like it was that response to me is so fucking played out. It's like, I was like, okay, I've heard this one before. Like, get the fuck out of here. Like, I've heard it. I've dealt with it. I'm moving on. Let's just move forward. It's not a big deal.
I mean, you are, and you are the first Palestinian quarterback to play in the NFL.
Half Palestinian, half Pakistani. My mom would get mad if you didn't recognize her Pakistani, because I'm also the first Pakistani quarterback to play.
That's two titles.
Two, not two down.
Do you? That's fucking huge, dude. I mean, I know you're not watching football now, but like, assuming there's going to be a second guy that comes after you at some point, hopefully in both of those regards. Like, how do you feel about being the first guy off the boat at Normandy? Like, get like,
it's funny. There's this kid I got put onto. This kid, one of my former teammates. I guess I can't say his name because he was recruiting at a major college, major college football program.
Ball State.
And he's recruiting. Yeah, Ball State. Did you say Ball State?
Ball State.
Because all of your people are from Indiana. Okay. So no, he's recruiting and he texts me and he's like, yo, bro, I found Gibran 2.0. Sorry to use myself in the first name, but he's in first person, but he said, I found Gibran 2.0. And he sends me this kid's video. And I kid you not, dude's like 6'3", great arm, and from his dad is Palestinian. And he got a full ride to a pretty big school. Didn't go to that big school, but and so like I tweeted at him like, yo, bro, like saw your film, like pretty good. Holler at me if you need anything, And he called me and we did I spent an hour telling him what he sucked at and what he needed to get better at. Yeah. Obviously, like, yo, you need to. But I think that was the first time where it was kind of like, oh shit, like, because he responded after I texted it, like, tweeted, like, yo, dude, we grew up watching you, like,
Yeah.
So that's really cool. And there were these Pakistani kids in Buffalo, which was hilarious. It was 4 Pakistani kids, and the Pakistani community, you're going to become a lawyer, a doctor. That's what your job is going to be. That's like what immigrants do. But they were able to convince their parents to allow them to play football because they basically pointed to me like, look, he's making more money than like those professions.
Yeah.
Like, and so they came to camp and they were actually like, they helped out the equipment staff for a training camp. And so I got to hang with them a little bit. So I guess that was cool. But I mean, I never put much stock in it while I was playing, to be honest.
Yeah.
Maybe because nobody saw that the flip side of it was some of the bullshit I had to deal with, on behind closed doors on the other end of it that was not positive.
Yeah, man.
It's not fun being the first Palestinian quarterback in a lot of ways, or the first Pakistani,
No, dude. And like, I always, we got to get political if we don't need to, but like, there's always something to be said about like those guys and the extra things that certain players have to do because of like, whatever, racism or just people's bias or like, and it sounds like in your case, I think it's important for people to hear that like, people were saying it in 2009. Like it was like getting verbalized to you like that clearly in a fucking interview.
03, 04. Yeah, 03, 04 was really hard. I mean, let's just keep it real. If I would have made looking back, when I got in the league, when I got drafted, we said how young I was. I think it was 21, 22. And I got drafted by the Washington football team, which was my hometown team. So just think about that. 22, played 1 year in high school, played 6 games in college, had no business being drafted in the NFL. Like, no, like pretty much like my college teammates joke that like, yo, you were the last person on the face of the planet from our recruiting class that anyone would have ever even imagined. And I would have agreed with them 100%, right? And honestly, I could have basically become an instant 50 millionaire with a lawsuit, like that. Like I could tell you like 4 or 5 instances where I could have just walked into HR, dropped the mic, and be like, talk to my motherfucking lawyers.
Yeah.
But I wanted to play, and in all honesty, like I know we're talking about it a lot now, and I'm talking about it because I think it's fascinating maybe for you and the listeners, but for me it was like, it still is, like it feels bad coming out of my mouth because I really don't give a fuck about it. I'm not holding anything egregious back on it because, like I said earlier, I was okay. I probably got the career that I deserved, and I'm cool with that. But it is fascinating to look back and be like, oh, like the amount of, in 03, 04, like some of the shit where like, if I told you, your jaw would be like, what? Like, that happened? Oh, and then that happened? And then that happened? It's like, that's just the reality. Yeah. But I think to move the conversation forward, the point is not, necessarily what happened to me, but of course, like how I dealt with it, right? So how I dealt with this, not go to HR. I didn't sue anybody. I just kept playing, and made myself, made the conversation for myself be about what I did within the vernacular of the football world. And I will fully acknowledge that I did not move any movements forward. I didn't change any conversations. I didn't make a bit of difference. And that's just the path I choose. And guess what? I still choose that every single day. Because in order to move the whole narrative forward, that would have to include a lot of trust from humanity that I simply just don't have, bro.
Yeah.
It's not, I think that, it's just not reality. I live in like reality-based, rationality. And none of that stuff that I would have done would have made a difference. When Kat took a knee, regardless of what side everybody falls on, I looked at my wife and I was like, yo, bro, I ain't got that.
Yeah.
That is, that is like, we all knew what the fuck was going to happen. If you had played and you were in a position like I was, and you saw that, I looked at my wife, and like my jaw hit the floor. I was like, yo, bro, like, I am just in utter. It had nothing. It's not about the decision. It's about like the belief, the inner belief that you're going to change. That your voice. I was like, yo, that's like that kind of human has another level that I just don't have. I just never saw that level. I never felt that level.
Yeah, man.
So,
I mean, I think people have. I mean, look, I've never talked about Kaepernick on the show, but I can. Like, I've got issues with other things he said since, but like, as far as like the act of taking that knee, because everybody, I remember watching it being like, this dude's never playing again, like, never
right.
smelling the league again. The thing that can't be questioned about it is the bravery of it. Because to be that first one in, like I made the reference, like the first guy off the fucking coming out of the ship and catching him in the forehead. But that really is, I think, like the best metaphor for it is like, you're taking one for everybody else. And so like,
well, and the funny thing is not, sorry to interrupt, but depending on what side of the fence you're on, whoever's listening to this, if they don't agree with what he did, they're going to use another word instead of brave.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's less about even categorizing it as brave or another word. It's just the actual, like, that little moment when that person just decides like to do that thing is like, whoa, like I just never, like I described, I just never had those moments where I was just like, yo, this is more important. I don't know if that's selfish. Maybe that's just selfish. Maybe I was just selfish in wanting to try to achieve something and recognizing that any step I took out of that selfish area would maybe move the narrative forward, but I ain't going to move the narrative forward by myself.
Yeah.
I'd have to have a group behind me. So anyway, we don't have to get too far into it, but that was, I don't know how I got this far off topic, but this is why I went in creativity after retiring.
Well, look, man, I don't know how to transition out of this, but I will say, I think you deserve. I mean, you've done it a couple times in the interview where you're kind of downplaying your talent level or like your contribution. But I would say that just the fact that you did it and like you did have to deal with shit that other players did not have to deal with because of who you are. Like that is doing something. That is something to give yourself credit for, because there's also people that would just not be able to do that. Like some people would just hear the first fucking nasty thing that somebody says and go, yeah, I don't even want to fucking be here, period. Like to go through that and to persevere and to make yourself a value on the team the way you did, that also is an accomplishment, and that is doing something. I feel like you deserve credit for that. So I got to get that off. But I want to talk about something else, because your creativity is, I mean, I've gone through your website and stuff. If you listen to the podcast, I'm obsessed with uniforms. And the fucking Alaska Airlines uniform that you made, can every team in the NFL please hire you right now to redo their shit? Please?
My dream job, man. You're my dream job. Matt Bowen, who was a safety for the Washington football team, and I was a rookie, and we would literally, after practice, go back to his townhouse in Reston, Virginia, and get on the sticks, NCAA 2000, whatever it was, and they had this function where you could just create the jerseys, bro. And Matt Bowen and I would just sit there and create jerseys, like hours on end. We wouldn't even play. We would just create the jerseys.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I mean, I have so much stuff to give in that department. But, right now it's all tied up in, you got to go work for a brand and, all that kind of stuff. But, yeah, needless to say, uniform design, and there's a group there that like really appreciates it and understands it. But it's, in some ways it's growing, but in other ways it's just so comical how bad stuff is. And largely because in my experience in the creative field, there's just too many voices.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, once you start getting like teams and then brands and then designers, and everybody starts talking and wanting to change this. And once it's just an amalgamation of crap, and the jersey ends up looking like that because like no one just sat there and said like, this is what we want to do. Whereas like Ralph Simone's, when he's designing a collection, he might listen to one guy, but he's basically like, yo, this is the jacket, like take it or leave it, you know?
Well, similar to the dialogue in your apparently wordy movie, less is more. Less is more with the uniforms. So like, I mean, there's so many uniforms where like, I mean, I kind of like what the Bengals did with their redesign, but like just looking at how the Bucks had like the alarm clock and like the pewter and then the white and then a little bit of the creamsicle and then black. And it's like, just be the creamsicle team with a gay pirate on your logo. That was amazing. That was the coolest logo in all of NFL. Like they would go, they would have the best uniforms. They just wore what they wore in the 90s. Just make the helmet have CTE protection. Like there's so many. I feel like when I looked at your Alaska Airlines design, which I'm gonna, for listeners, I'll link to this in the show notes and on the YouTube. I'll link to it underneath the video. But like everything should look like that. Like when I look at that, I'm like, that looks like a modern, but still almost like, it's weird to say throwback since you just kind of pulled it like out of your asshole. But like, that's like a throwback America Airlines uniform with like a little bit of fucking flair to it. That's what it should be. I think about like, I can't remember, maybe I was talking about this in somebody else's podcast, but I feel like college football gets it right more than the NFL does because there's so much more tradition with the uniforms that they honor where the simplicity of some of them, like Alabama, Penn State.
Yeah, I mean, you're missing a big portion of the conversation here, which is dinero, you know?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, fuck. Like, you know, yeah, in the NCAA, they don't have to change their uniforms that much because they don't have to worry about selling jerseys because they don't have to pay the players, et cetera, et cetera. In the NFL, it's about, hey, how many new jerseys can we crank out to get everybody to buy a fucking new jersey? So I think that's a big, big, big part of it is that, you know, if you're not changing something every 2 to 3 years to create a new design, then you're missing out on jersey sales, frankly.
Do you think?
I think that's a big part of it.
How do you feel about the likeness stuff that's coming up with NCAA right now? I think that I've seen that there's been a couple bills to like let players own their own
well,
image.
My overall feeling, here's my overall feeling. I'll try to get it in one sentence. America is like all about capitalism, yet their major sport and sports, but let's just talk about football, in both the NFL and the NCAA, is basically the most socialist sport you could have in the way it's constructed.
Yeah. No
one's going down. No one has to worry about, you know, everybody's getting a salary cap. Everybody's getting the same amount of money. So it's kind of comical. It's like, you know, it's basically social. At the NFL, the way, you know, the whole thing is constructed is a polar opposite to, let's use the example of the Premier League. The Premier League is capitalism personified.
Yeah.
If you got a lot of teams, a lot of money, you go buy Kevin De Bruyne, you go buy all the best players every week, and you go fucking win the games. And the top 4 teams are the same every year. Not the league. The NFL, you win, you're going to get the worst draft position. So these commentaries about like likeness and all this stuff, like it all comes back to the same thing, right? It's the haves, and they worked really hard to become haves, whichever how you look at it. And they want to stay that way.
Yeah.
There's not going to be if you introduced relegation, if you introduced actual American business concepts into the NFL and the NCAA, and it was regulated like a true American business model, it would be a lot harder to sell an NFL team. Right now, it's so easy to sell an NFL team because there's just money in the bank. Yeah. You buy the team, you know there's a bottom floor. You're going to make this much money every year in, year out. But the Bengals should have been relegated a gazillion times ago, right?
Yeah.
But they're not. They have no fear of it, right? So that permeates through all our leagues. No matter how you want to look at it, that's essentially American professional and collegiate sports, right?
Where would you I'm curious. Like, this is a fun place to take it. Like, if you just had like a magic wand to be like, we're gonna set up the NFL as if it were like a Premier League. Like, would you?
Yep.
So, what would you do? You would have like a minor league NFL roster.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's super. I mean, in fairness, and I know these new leagues pop up, and it's always like, oh, the talent isn't that good and all that stuff, and I think that's all just hogwash. Frankly, I could show you 10 quarterbacks, take jerseys off. I'm not saying like the elite level, right? Where I was at, right? The top level quarterbacks. The difference between is like a lot smaller than you think, right? I mean, obviously it's greater in a certain perspective, but when you step back far enough, you can find enough quarterbacks, right? If a guy's watching a third level MAC NCAA football game and watching the quarterback there, and he's fine with that quarterback play, trust me, I could find more than 32 starting quarterbacks in the world easily. So the point is that if the concept were taking to a fuller place, you would say, all right, if you want to start a football team, go ahead, start a football team. And there's leagues that you can progressively move your football team up in, right? And that involves more competition, that involves, hey, like there's guys that get cut that like I know can still play. At least I can get a year or two out of them.
Yeah.
Definitely. So I'm taking that hand-me-down who still wants to play. He's a vet. And I'm saying, hey, you could still play for the last 2 years, right? Like, give me 2 more years. I'm going to ride you up to the next level. And then when I get to this next level, we're going to get more fans. We're going to get more money. Then I'm going to reach and get a backup from the NFL, bring him down, get a loan from the NFL, right? An NFL, that's how it works. The NFL has a player in waiting, the third quarterback, but they really like him. They'd like to see him play. Hey, I'll pay you $250K, loan him for the season. He's going to come down, play for my level team, second level. You get more football for everybody, which everybody liked. Yeah, it works just like the Premier League would. But the problem is that why would you ever? MLS is doing the same thing that NFL is because they see that model. And frankly, the Premier League, because most of the owners are now Americans, tried to do the same shit recently and make that Super League. Let's take the model and let's do that shit over here. And basically what the fans did, oh, hell no. Yeah. You are not doing that over here. So it's basically like, yo, the money is just too good, man. The security is too good. It's socialism. It's a socialist performance.
It would really be such a shock to the system of, I think, like American sports fans to be like, the Braves got relegated. Now like the Durham Bulls are going to be in the World Series. Like, but there is something, I mean, I know that, like, I'm not a huge soccer fan, even by saying soccer, I'm revealing something in myself. But like, there is something I really like about that system of like, yeah, if you suck for 5 seasons, you don't get to be in the top league anymore. Someone else could be. It's like the conversation people have where they're like, could the Alabama Crimson Tide beat the Jaguars? And it's like, well, we would find out if the Jaguars are bad enough. Then like maybe they, and I'm obviously we wouldn't switch with a college, but like the idea of that level of competition, I think is fascinating. And I've never even heard it in the context of American football before. And now I'm like, I feel like it's all I'm going to talk about in the podcast.
Listen, again, I don't like to talk in absolutes. I'm literally just making the point that we are a country that like runs on capitalism. Yeah. Like that is like the thing, and any talk of socialism, rightfully or wrongfully, wherever you sit on it, it basically, just becomes like, oh, no way. But if you honestly analyze our sporting leagues, that is exactly how they're run, bro. That's exactly socialism. They are like the epitome of socialism. NBA, NFL, Major League Baseball, epitome of it.
Yeah.
And who do they take to the cleaners? The fans.
Yeah.
You're paying for the stadiums. You're paying exorbitant amount of prices. You're giving them the TV contracts. And let's not even talk about. I mean, basically, what happened for me was obviously I played. So when I watch the games, it's weird. It's like, oh, cover 3. Aaron Rodgers is saying alert, alert. Okay, he's switching to weak side zone. Okay, like it got weird. I was telling like when I had friends and was like watching football with them, I'd be like, oh, here comes weak side. The Tony Romo stuff that everybody loses their shit about. It's like, yo, bro, all quarterbacks are sitting at home and Tony Romo's getting all this money, right? And largely because he's like guessing plays.
Yeah.
And I can guarantee you, I could call like a gazillion dudes and do like a quick straw poll and be like, bro, like, welcome to everyone like everybody can do that. Like we don't understand what the cool thing about it is. We wouldn't want to know what the play was before it happened. How does that make it more enjoyable? But he got like a lot of street cred off of that. More power to him. Like I'm happy for him. But the point is like the point of watching sports is you don't know what the fuck's going to happen next. Yeah. Like it's live. It's cool. Like this is going to be. But I mean, I remember I got cut by the Seahawks, and I was in the stands with my dad because he came and I got cut. It was like weird. I'm in the stands with my dad. And Holmgren, you get past the 50, you get cover 3. He's running X shallow cross. Like it's. I mean, look it.
Yeah.
So I just be like, yo, Dad, Jurabicious, 20 yards, left sideline, here it comes. Because I was like super high up, see the coverage. Know the formation, and this dude taps me on the shoulder. He's like, "Can you please stop doing that?" Like, all right, yeah.
Dude, it's like watching The Sopranos with somebody. You're at the finale, and they're like, "Cut to black. We don't know what happens." You're like, "Dude, then watch it."
Exactly. So anyway, that's I don't know where we were. We were having a lot of fun, so we're getting off topic, but. I'll let you get it back on.
Well, this is what I'm going to do because we're at an hour, and I think I told you 15 minutes when I first said do my show. So I actually want to wrap it up here because I don't want to take too much of your time. But I mean, dude, I thought we were going to make jokes about, you beating Brooks Bollinger. Was it Brooks Bollinger? Who was the quarterback at Wisconsin when you guys beat him at home?
Oh, yeah. I think Brooks Bollinger. Yeah.
Yeah,
Bollinger, and I threw it over Jim Leonard, who's now a good friend. He's the defensive coordinator at Wisconsin, and he ended up coming to Buffalo, and that was funny. But yeah,
I think once we stop recording, I'm going to ask you for the emails of every single quarterback you played with. We'll see how comfortable you are. Look, man, before we hop off, I want you to tell my listeners where you're going to be the first quarterback to get the Bring in the Backups bump. And it's a big bump.
Oh,
I think you're going to get at least 3 fat Republicans from the middle of the country to buy a T-shirt from your website, minimum. So you tell my listeners where they can find your stuff, how they can support your creative endeavors right now.
To be honest with you, man, here's what I'd say to that. I spent a lot of money to buy Gibran.com. So there you go. I spent a lot of money to buy that. Gibran.com, if you want to look at shit, see what I've done. But other than that, just keep supporting Erick, man. I mean, I'm good. Like, I gave up my phone a long time ago. Fuck these social media accounts. They're ruining everybody's lives. Please don't follow me.
Gibran,
if you want to email me, it's Gibran@Gibran. If you like want to chat or something, or you had fun. But like, take all that energy, give it to Erick. He needs it for this show. Like, I'm good, bro. I am good,
dude.
So seriously, like, take all your energy, support this dude. I watched his clips. He's pretty funny. The death skit on America's Got Talent was fucking great. They just didn't get it, and I think the point was that they weren't supposed to get it. It was like double entendre funny. Like, it was like you had like transcended something there. I mean, so I appreciate the work you're putting in. I know the tough slog you are under to make it in a creative industry where the masses are now responsible for your success, and you have to trust mass appeal, which God bless you. I've been there for 12 or 15 years. and mass appeal is totally not worth it. So just support Erick. He's gonna need the help. Erick, just keep going. Maybe think.
This is the
maybe
worst.
think
This is the worst
Maybe-
plug anybody's ever done on the show. You didn't plug yourself at all. You started by complimenting me, and by the end, you're convincing me to start a graphic design website. What the fuck? Just tell people where to fucking buy a T-shirt, Gibran.
I'm not selling any T-shirts. I'm not selling any T-shirts anymore. I just stopped selling clothes. It was I sponsored a PGA Tour golfer. I had a clothing line. It did really well. And then you realize, like, nah, made in America isn't that great because your margins suck. And at the end of the day, the consumer just wants Chinese stuff, man, because it's cheaper.
Yeah.
And it was all limited edition. And, like, at the end of the day, that's not how you make money. So the ways to make lots of money, I'm not suited for that, bro. I'm not suited for that. So the point is, the reason I would be giving myself a plug is that I had some belief that plug would lead to making money. But I already have traversed that for the last 12 to 15 years.
Yeah.
That what I'm doing is never going to do that. And so, therefore, let's not waste everybody's time, because everybody's time is valuable. And Instagram's going to be dead in 5 to 10 years anyway. We're building all these platforms for them to just fucking then suck and sell us ads. So the point is, follow Erick, follow his podcast, tell other people about it. And then one day when he has Tom Brady on, nobody will remember. But as a footnote, Erick will be like, I want to shout out to Gibran Hamdan all the way back 2021. And he was the spark that lighted this show. And I'll be off in Morocco or something, sipping something, like not giving a shit about anything. And somebody in the pub will be like, oh, you got mentioned in the Bringing the Backups podcast. I'm like, oh, really? Shit.
So to boil that down for my listeners, support Gibran by closing your eyes and sending him a positive vibe, or emailing him and telling him you had a good time listening to him on the podcast. Dude, I did not think we'd be talking about Moroccan soccer and 9/11 racism for 45 minutes, but it turns out this conversation went a very different way than I thought it would. I would love to have you back.
Next time, I want Lisa on there too. Like, I want the feminine energy as well.
Who the fuck is Lisa? Liz.
Not Lisa. Liz, my bad. Liz and you, and I want some of that feminine energy. It could be like a little bouncing, We can get into like a lot more stuff.
She's gonna be thrilled that the biggest guest that I've had on my show so far is calling for her. Well, no, to say her name wrong. Yeah, I'll leave that part out. No, but just that she's asking, because here's the deal. The most feedback I get on this show, like 90% of the feedback is just, why isn't your wife on more often? And I'm like, it's my fucking show. She just walks in and like starts talking to me off mic, and people are like, more of that, more of you guys bickering about something that happened that week. So this is good. This is good to reaffirm.
That's actually a compliment to you, though. You do know that, right?
Of course, yeah. No, yeah.
Right.
We play it up, but like we have a very fun. We're a great couple.
Yeah, that's fucking awesome. You married the right girl. Good for you, man. It's fucking basically top three things of your life, and you knocked it out of the park. Good for you.
Hell yeah, man. That's it. Yeah, that's the best thing. That's the best thing I've done so far.
There you go. So that's why you should have her more often. That's why your voice changes a little bit when she's on the show. She's kind of hilarious. It's kind of funny to hear her shit about football. But like, obviously, the part that I'm excited about is like next time we can talk more about football. And like, honestly, she'd probably be right about more things than everybody thought she would be right about. You know what I'm saying? Like, because of her perspective being so far removed, like I would want to draw out like we'd be like, oh, why do you run cover 2? And I would just like tell her what cover 2 was. She's like, oh yeah, to throw it there. And then you would go on to this whole thing like, oh, cover 2, this is why you want to attack the safety. And like, yeah, not really. She was kind of more right than you were.
It would be fucking infuriating when I do. So I got her on a couple stand-up shows back in New York.
Okay.
just because I was in it a couple clubs. And she would come up and be like the second or third funniest comic on the lineup, having done it 5 or 6 times. And like not that much less funny than me. And I'm like, if she even tried a little bit harder, she would surpass me so quickly. It was like, to be honest, I'll tell this story real quick, but she's an actor, and that's what she spent her whole career doing. Like, you know, high school, college, that's what she wanted to be. And then when we got together, we were both doing improv, and I guess somebody saw me in a improv show and like had me auditioning. I got to audition for like Book of Mormon and Boardwalk Empire, all these shows back in New York. And I'm not an actor. I didn't consider myself an actor. I'd be like, yeah, I don't really care about this stuff. Like, I'd like the day of the audition, I'd be like, hey, what is Boardwalk Empire? Is that like an old show? She'd be like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, I've been working my whole life. It was driving her insane to see me getting these opportunities that I was not appreciating. But yeah, the same thing has kind of started to happen with stand-up, where I'm like, if she even puts the slightest amount of effort in, I'm going to watch her getting booked. She's going to be like, yeah, I got into this JFL festival in Montreal. I don't know if I want to travel to Montreal. What is Edinburgh? Like, she would just be shitting all over things that I've been
right
for my whole life.
Moral of the story is try less hard.
I don't know what the fuck to make of this interview, dude, but thank
everybody, just right now, everybody, for the next week, just do less. Just do less. Like that show, like Paul Rudd would say on the surfboard. Like, do less. Try less hard. It works. It just works, man. I mean, take it from somebody who works, like, tried really hard for a long fucking time.
So clearly we've gotten Gibran in a downturn in his life. Telling my audience to stop trying. Look, brother, thank you for doing the show.
Yeah, man.
We will definitely have you back anytime you want to be on. And yeah, man, this was a blast.
All right, sounds good, man. Take care, Eric.
All right, later. Thanks for listening to the show. If you'd like to support us, visit erichellwig.com, where you can follow on social media, join the newsletter, visit the merch store, or email me directly. If you're on Apple Podcasts or iTunes, rate us 5 stars and write a review. If not, just subscribe from your preferred podcast platform. Lastly, if you know someone who would enjoy our content, please tell them about the show. That's erichellwig.com for all things backups, and we'll see you on the next episode.